Hello, this is Daniel Roth. I am the editor-in-chief of LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us here on This is Working. This is a show where for years we have sat down with the world's top professional leaders about how they navigate their careers and their companies and where their industries are going. Well, now things have really changed with over half of humanity under some form of lockdown, with economies in free fall everywhere, with more than 1 million cases of people with coronavirus. There's really only one story that matters today, and that's the question of how do we get through this? What do we need to do to stay safe, to beat this virus, and to get our economies moving again? How do we deal with it in the short run, and how do we deal with it in the long run? So we've turned this into a live show, which is what you are tuned into right now. We're bringing on people who have answers or who are asking the right questions and who have access to a lot of the research and understanding of what it's going to take to be able to make it through this. Last week, we had Mark Cuban on. Mark Cuban gave great advice about what small businesses should be doing right now to try to survive the coronavirus crisis. And today we have someone on who has really been a leader in fighting pandemics for a long time. Bill Gates on. He is the co-founder of Microsoft, and he's one of the world's largest, if not the world's largest philanthropist. And he's also someone who has, because of his work dealing with global health issues and of taking a very scientific approach to what's going on in the world, he, in 2015, had a very popular TED Talk which said a pandemic is coming and we need to deal with this right now. We need to start wargaming it. We need to figure out how to get through this. No one listened, or not many people listened. So Bill Gates is not standing around and talking about why he was right. He is actually putting his money and his time and his brain power to use to try to get us all through this. So we are incredibly thrilled to have Bill Gates here answering your questions today about the coronavirus and beyond. Bill, welcome to This is Working.
Good to talk to you.
Yeah, great to see you again. So where are you right now? Are you at home?
I'm up in Seattle, and I'm mostly doing Teams meetings. You know, that product group has gotten a lot of feedback from me. I haven't been traveling. It's utterly different than my routine used to be.
Right. Well, we are a few weeks into this now, in the US at least. And I'm curious how you think things are going in terms of making it through the pandemic. Are the lockdowns working from your point of view? Are we doing enough? Do we need to be doing more? You are famously an optimist. Where are you right now?
Well, this scenario is a nightmare that I was worried about. I not only did the TED Talk, I did the Shattuck Lecture. I wrote for the New England Journal of Medicine about the innovations that we should invest in so that we could respond quickly. And the speed of response to get diagnostics, to get drugs, to get a vaccine make all the difference because this is exponential growth. Now, some countries took and did testing very quickly. You know, in general, countries have these PCR machines, and so all you needed was a little bit of special thing that could run a coronavirus-specific test there. The U.S., unfortunately, let a level of infections come in February that meant that we couldn't be like Taiwan or South Korea in terms of catching it early and never having a large number of cases. So now, you know, we've had to do very drastic measures to get the infection rate down, you know, to get off of that exponential curve that some communities are still in, start to see it level. And by the end of this month, the places that started early, if they've done a very good job, will actually see that plateau, still at much too high a level to open back up. You'll need another probably 4 weeks before the number of cases in absolute is so small that you'll be able to watch and contain those, particularly if you've changed the testing regime to really prioritize the important surveillance.
So do you think that states understand this? Do you get a sense, and this is a question that comes in from Greg Tapper, why do you think some states have been significantly slower in mandating the shelter-in-place orders? Should this be a shelter-in-place order that's coming from the federal government, or are you okay with how we are handling in the U.S. the shelter-in-place rules?
Well, it's a mistake not to have the entire country take these extreme measures. It's understandable that people find this shocking. They're not used to the exponential growth of a respiratory transmitted virus. They haven't spent time, looking like the model that I showed in the TED Talk, where you had 30 million deaths and $3 trillion of economic damage just from that one event if you weren't prepared for it. So it takes time to get used to, but once somebody educates you about, hey, you're going to shut down, it's just a question of whether you do it after your cases have grown or before they've grown. Parts of the country have low enough cases that they can have way less deaths per person than the other parts if they act very, very soon. The only exception to that would be if we stop people moving inside the country altogether, and then each piece could have its own policies. But as long as we're allowing movement, we're all in this together.
Yeah, so either you have to do the shutdowns or you have to have transportation bans in place. Do you think that there has been some good news on the virus front? Some good news on the vaccine front. No vaccine yet, but I know that you had a vaccine that you're backing through Inovia, I believe, is now in production, or where are we with that? What is happening that makes you feel like there might be a vaccine in the works?
Yeah, so the foundation, this is my second career in infectious disease that probably lots of LinkedIn members haven't spent much time on these issues. It's actually surprisingly hard to make a vaccine. Typically, it takes 5 years. We have a TB vaccine trial, which was going to be an 8-year trial, but now interrupted by this epidemic. In order to make the vaccine and make sure it's safe and make sure it works, in this case, it has to work very well in old people. People like Fauci and myself are saying probably 18 months. It could be slightly less than that or slightly longer. There's about 100 efforts in the world, of which about 8 to 10 are very promising. And we have to back all of these. About 4 of them are based on a new approach, which is RNA DNA, and that's like CureVac, Moderna, BioNTech, Inovio. All of these are people funded by the Gates Foundation because we were going to use that platform to make vaccines for things like malaria. And we've always known that investing in this, both directly and through a group we created called CEPI, would get the world to be more ready for the pandemic. So the Moderna vaccine went into phase 1 3 weeks ago, and the other RNA DNAs will go in the next month into that phase. But sadly, even going full speed and with the right indemnification, taking a little bit of risk on side effects and building the manufacturing in parallel and backing all the leading companies to build manufacturing, not even knowing which one will prove to be safe and efficacious. Even doing all of that, you still get to this 18 months, which is unfortunate because until you've got that vaccine widely used, life will still be not back to normal. We can open up in certain ways, hopefully in the United States, by early June if things go well. But it won't be, where you're doing large public gatherings or even filling up a restaurant. It'll be semi-normal until that vaccine is out there in billions of doses.
So a semi-normal economy for 18 months. How do you see the economy changing? Have you thought about what this means for how we work together, how we go to restaurants, how we congregate? Have you started playing that out? What do you think it looks like?
Yeah, I'm working on a memo about that because society is going to have to look at all of its activities and say which ones are really beneficial and which ones create a risk of a rebound, and how are we minimizing rebounds by doing aggressive testing, aggressive quarantine of those who test positive or even just have symptoms, and contact tracing, where we have examples from China, South Korea, and many others, Singapore, Hong Kong, who have done these things quite well. China's not having substantial rebound, and yet they have some very tough policies with masks and temperature. I do think that things like running factories, doing construction, going back to school, those things can be done. Whether or not large gatherings like a sport event, the risk-reward ratio will be positive in that time period. I'm doubtful that some things, because the economic benefit they create relative to the disease risk may make them not appropriate. And for the economy, we've done a lot of things to the economy here. I mean, it's necessary, but it's very radical. We've cut off the supply of goods, but we've also created, a drop in wealth, an increase in uncertainty, and a sense that should I go out, will people want to go and travel? Will they want to go to restaurants? Will they even think, buying a new home is an appropriate thing? So even once the government is saying, okay, these activities are okay, we can't expect the demand side to reemerge overnight. People, and they'll range from person to person, but there'll be a lot of caution that will damp the demand in a pretty dramatic way.
And you are talking a lot of this deals with how we deal with this in the developed world. In the developing world, you think this is going to be an even bigger problem. We have members who are joining from all around the world in this chat. Again, this is Working on LinkedIn. Thank you for joining us. We've got Hassan from Saudi Arabia, Henry from Zimbabwe, and there was a great question that was in your article from Ikfash Jahan from Bangladesh, who said, look, staying at home simply isn't an option for many of us in poor countries. How can people maintain social distancing in a 6 by 6 foot square home? And the consequent economic crisis might be handled by rich countries, but we can't. How will we fight hunger issues? So really important question. What are you thinking there?
Well, it's a super good point. You can't simply take what the successful rich countries have done and map those onto a developing country. Rich countries, people have lots of living space so they can distance. They've got internet. The food supply requires a very small part of the workforce that can be special cased. And it's not like, Bangladesh is a great example. And so they won't be able to use this quarantine approach that has been the primary tactic in the rich world. For the entire world, my big focus, our foundation, has shifted to accelerating not only the vaccine, but also therapeutics, so that if we could find drugs which can be antivirals or immune suppressant or antibodies, there's actually multiple classes, that could come more rapidly. In 4 to 6 months, the therapeutics could reduce the death rate a lot. And that would apply in Bangladesh as well. But what social distancing looks like in places like India, Bangladesh, it won't be as effective. And there you really could cause people to have a lack of food. You could cause, social unrest in a very deep way if you're being unrealistic about the basic needs that people have.
So we have about 5 minutes left with you, Bill. I want to make sure that we get some of the questions coming in from the stream. Adam Rosenbaum says, moving into the future, what improvements are needed in supply chain logistics and vendor risk management, whether physical or virtual, to prevent floundering in the face of a pandemic? So does this change how we think about building goods or moving goods around the world?
Well, my belief is that this time we will be serious about being ready for the next time. And that would mean that we would have gotten the diagnostic scale up super dramatically, even within the first month. And we would be able to find therapeutics, way faster, and we'd be able to develop a vaccine in probably half the time it'll take because we didn't invest in front of this. So I don't think once we get through this one that the world will need to think of, okay, pandemics are going to be coming again and again, and so let's redesign supply chain. This should be a singular event where the tools we build would mean that you can catch it before it would ever get to the scale, this global tragic scale, that where the biggest price will be in the developing countries. That should be avoidable.
And what do you say? This is we talk about the impact this is having on a global stage, but for a lot of people, this is having a very personal impact, not just on lives lost, but also on jobs lost. There are many people who have been furloughed or have lost their jobs, and they're not sure whether they will actually be able to get any jobs back. This is a question coming in from Taringa, who says, "Hi, Mr. Gates. I know a lot of people panicked about their jobs. What do you think will happen with those lost jobs? And what do you think the big businesses and small businesses should do during that time?" That last question came from Sunny Nguyen.
Well, we have this period of the extreme lockdown, which hopefully will only be 10 weeks or slightly more. And there, the economic activity is greatly reduced. Then we have the period of opening up, and then when we have the magic vaccine, we go back to normal. Some industries, like travel, tourism, restaurants, the demand, even if the government's comfortable with those things, will still be less. And so that's why, unemployment insurance, these loans to small business, looking at the areas like delivery where there's increased workers' need, and trying to make it easy for people to make those transitions, even if they'll go back when that demand is recreated. The government is called on here to step up. The government did not do its duty to prepare for this well in advance, but now people are focused on it, and we can see different countries responding in different ways. The scale of the response is completely unprecedented. I mean, you've never had 10% of GDP type responses, and it's great that that's being done, but will it really reach the people in need? We're still kind of designing this as we go. Sadly, this is another thing that students who have no internet access, or a lot of the jobs that the lower income part of society do, this is very unfair in terms of how it impacts people who already had a lot less wealth.
And do you think that this has that is a very optimistic look at where things could go and how it could get better. Bill, thank you so much for spending your time with us here today. It's been really terrific. We are going to take this entire interview. It will live on the LinkedIn editors page. So if you want to come back later and watch the whole thing and take notes and see the comments, they're out there. Bill, thank you again. Look forward to your next article and posts, and thanks for everything you're doing.
Good to talk to you.
All right, that was Bill Gates joining us on This Is Working. We will be doing these sessions weekly with people who are leading the professional world through this crisis and who have answers or have the right questions that we should be asking ourselves. Thank you all for writing in. There was an incredible amount of interaction in the stream, people from all over the world writing in with their questions. I'm sorry that we didn't get to ask Bill all of them, and we will, but he will continue to be on the platform answering other questions that he's raising or that you're raising. So thank you all. We will take all of this, put it into a podcast that will come out in a few days. And again, this is always available on the LinkedIn editors page. Be sure to leave your comments, share it, leave questions, tell us who you want to hear from next. And thank you all. Good luck. We will make it through this.